So let's turn to what I think is going to be a more useful form of explanation. It concerns institutional tensions that exist when you're trying to govern a country the size of China. The first of these tensions is centralization, or centralism versus regionalism. Look back at the geography of China. If we take this geography and look at a map, what we'll see is that, in fact, China is composed of regions. We have the North China Plain. To the northwest, we have the area behind the passes where Chang'an, the capital of Western Han, is located. We can look to the southeast, right? The marshy and wet southeast, but where rice agriculture takes place. We can look to the west, to Sichuan. These are really the areas in Han that matter. There's a series of questions the Han and any dynasty or any government has to deal with once it recognizes that it has different regions. Are these regions going to be administered from the center, or should they have their own governments? What proportion of wealth can stay back in the region, and what proportion needs to go to the central government to fund its activities? Should policies and institutions be the same for all regions? If you have a rice-growing region and a wheat-growing region, and if they have different calendars, the harvests happen at different times, should we tax these regions in the same fashion? Is that the way we should do it? Or should we recognize regional diversity? Should we allow customary law of land ownership? In the north, where all the fields are flat in the North China Plain, it's going to be very different from the southeast, where you have to invest in rice paddy and water and irrigation to make sure your crop comes in. Now, there are pros and cons to both. Centralism has a great advantage that it concentrates resources from all regions in one place. And that gives the center power both to defend the country, but also to make targeted investments in new canals, for example, joining different regions together, things that wouldn't happen if regions had all the power on their own. So centralism is great. We could say it concentrates resources. It's essential for national defense, which serves many regions. It allows targeted investment in projects like canals that cross regional boundaries. On the other hand, regionalism is very good too, because the region understands its own needs. Right? It doesn't try to follow uniform policies. It tries to suit policies to the real and practical needs of that region. You can argue the case either way. Now, we know if we look at Qin versus Han that Qin was committed to a policy of centralization. There would be no regional variation allowed whatsoever. And that, of course, is one of the problems that Qin created for itself by forcing its own rules on all the states it conquered. Han recognizes the problem. If I look at this map now, what I see is that what Han did was it in fact divided the country really into two parts. The west, the northwest, behind the passes in Sichuan, were governed directly by the capital in Chang'an, by the emperor. But most of the territory to the east was governed by princes or kings who had created their own kingdoms, and these were the people that would revolt in 154 BC. So we see the Han recognizing that, in fact, the old feudal states of Zhou that Qin had conquered really wanted some degree of independence. Now, over time, the kings of the Eastern kingdoms see that they want to have hereditary control over their regions. They want to put their sons into place. And ministers at court warned the emperor that the Eastern kings have now become a threat to the continued existence of the Han. If they don't supply resources, if they don't support the center in war, right, then the center can fall. In the end, the Han moves away from its initial dual system of giving regional powers a great deal of authority and goes back, in fact, along the road of Qin bureaucratic centralization. After it puts down the revolt of the 7 feudatories or the 7 Eastern kings, it in fact starts to limit the amount of land or the amount of territory that belongs in kingdoms. It takes the commandery county system from Qin and starts to apply it to more kingdoms in the East, by and large, the trend is towards centralization and away from regionalism.